How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth for ever, that it shall be for a time, and times, and an half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished.
In this video, we're going to ask a word of wisdom from our Heavenly Father in Yeshua's name. So in this video, we're going to cover the 7 years of Daniel 9:27. Now, in Daniel 9:27, it says the sacrifice and the oblation ceases at the midst of the week. So that is in the middle of the 7-year period. That means that Antichrist arrives in the middle. Because when the sacrifice and oblation ceases, that means people are no longer worshiping the true Messiah. They are now worshiping a false, fake Messiah that appears to be Christ, riding on a white horse with a crown, going forth conquering and to conquer. So that time period that's given is given 3 times in the book of in the Bible. It's given in Daniel 7:25, Daniel 12:7, and Revelation 12:14, and defined as time, times, and a half a time. That is the half of the 7 years originally. Now, in Daniel 12:11, we are told that there will be 1,290 days, or 42 months, that lead up to the arrival of the abomination of desolation. The arrival is the same time as the midst of the week. So we have 2 scripture verses pointing us to this middle time period as his arrival. Now, in Matthew 24, Jesus Christ said that that time was shortened. But the time leading up to Antichrist's arrival was not shortened. He very specifically said that those days of great tribulation, when the false Christ is in the desert, and people say, Christ is here, but he's not here. It's only his specific time that was shortened, not the time leading up to that. So we have a confirmation of these two, of the 7-year breakdown in the book of Revelation. It is Revelation chapter 12. It breaks down the 42 months in verse 6 as leading up to the time of Satan. And Revelation 12:14, the time, times and a half, which is Satan's time. It's always been Satan's time. It's never been 7 years. It has never been. So Revelation 12 documents for us the pattern that we are to follow. So now this is what the timeline looks like when the time is shortened. Because the time and a half has been shortened to 2.5 months, which I'm going to show later how that is half of 5 months, how that pattern fits. But first I want you to look at the first half of the 7 years. People often ask, what belongs in the first half? If time is shortened, what belongs there? Well, again we look to the book of Daniel. Daniel 4:16 says, let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. So that was actually 7 years that passed over the king of Babylon, where he could not rule his kingdom. The king of Babylon has often been pictured as a type of Antichrist. So his heart was changed from a man's heart, meaning his system, his rulership, his crown, as is pictured in Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. He comes with a crown, but he doesn't get that crown until the 7 times has passed over him. So that means that the first half of the 7 years, time somewhat passes as usual. There is prophecy occurring, but as far as the days of Daniel, the only thing that occurs in that time period is the 2300 days, the beginning of the 2300 days. But as far as the 7 years is concerned, time passes as usual. It's passing over the king of Babylon, as it is written in Daniel 4:16. And again, we still have that parallel in Revelation 12, notice. That parallel is not lost on us just because the time was shortened. We still have, let me turn my video off. Maybe I can't. Maybe I can move it. I don't know. We still have Revelation 12:6. We still have 42 months that lead up to Satan's arrival. as it is written in Daniel 12:11. The abomination of desolation shows up at the end of the 1290 days. Now, the 1290 days and the 1260 days are 30 days different. But basically, in the solar calendar, it's 42 months in both timelines. So, it's just about equal. So, don't want to confuse the issue there. There is a 30-day time period that leads up to his arrival. Exactly, if you count it on a calendar. So now here we have the comparison that we were looking for. We have the original 7 years, where Satan arrived in the midst of it. That's what was prophesied in Daniel 9:27, and he had a time and a half, as it is written 3 times in the Bible. Now, when the time was shortened, it was shortened so that he still has half an hour. That's Revelation 8:1. We're told that Satan has half of the 5 months. So the pattern still fits. Now, the first half of the 5 months is also paralleling the Old Testament Pharaoh, when Pharaoh pursued after the children of Israel. So this pictures the demonic army in the other realm. He had 600 chosen chariots. The Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army. Now, I want you to think, where is the army? We are told in Revelation 9 where this army is located. They're locked up in the bottomless pit. As it is written in Jude 6, they are locked up. And as it is written in Revelation 9, they are unlocked by Satan himself, who has a key. That is the purpose of the key. It is figurative in the sense that it's in the spiritual realm and not in the physical realm. So the 5th trump equals the war trump, of where he took his chariots. He gathers his chariots together in his army and pursues after the children of Israel. That's the first half. So we'll look at that in the 5-month timeline. It's very interesting. God has recorded for us in the book of Numbers trumpets. The first trump was sounded, and that meant that the east camp was to break camp. The second time the trump sounded, the south camp was to break camp. It looks like I accidentally have an E there. I meant to put S. And then in the west camp, in the Septuagint, we have an additional bit of information. And it's logical that you have to have the west camp break camp as well, toward the sea. So this was the 3rd time the trump was sounded. The 4th time, again in the Septuagint, same verse, the north camp was to break camp. So now you have 4 trumps where there's no war. This is not for war. In fact, it says in Numbers 10, verse 7, when you gather the camp, the first 4 trumpets, that it's not for war. In Numbers 10:8, we are told that only the priests shall sound the trumpet. And in verse 9, again, we have the 5th trumpet. When you go forth to war, you shall blow an alarm with the trumpets. So the overlay here, or the picture that the Old Testament is giving us, is that the 5th trump was an alarm for war. Here we have the final graphical outline of Revelation. We have these 3 trumpets that are blown, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. Each one of them is a war trumpet, just like it is written in Numbers 10, verses 5, 6, 7, and 9. So the 5th trumpet is the war in heaven. That is the trumpet being blown for war. The first 4 were not for war. They were for gathering the camp, breaking camp, and gathering the troops. But the 5th trump, and they were for you. So the purpose of this 5th trump, as it is written in Numbers 10, verse 9, is you blow it so you can defeat your enemy. So if you're not blowing this trump and saying it equals a war trump, then you're not warning your people to break camp and gather. So that's the importance, that the trump itself was defined, the figure was defined by the Old Testament. So the type was set in place as a second witness for us, so that we may know what the purpose of the 5th trump is. And then reading in Revelation chapter 9, we see that that key was given to that evil one to go and release his army, which he is the king over, which means they are in the bottomless pit and they are locked up, just as it is written in Jude chapter 6. So this is a warning to those in heaven that that army is coming, and to those on earth at the sixth trump is when they're finally cast out, because they're not in heaven right now. The evil army is not in heaven. They are locked up, as it is written in Jude chapter 6. So at the sixth trump, this is when the 1290th day of Daniel occurs. And this 1290, this 42 months is still regular time. It has not been shortened. The only period that has been shortened is that hour of temptation, which is figurative for the time Satan is on earth, because it's half of the hour in heaven, which is 2.5 months, which leads us to our last trump, which is the seventh trump, and the arrival of Christ. This is also a war trump. So that is why these woe trumps equal the trumps of war, because the first one is released of the demonic army to heaven, and then the sixth trump is the release of the demonic army to earth. And the seventh is the heavenly army defeating the entire world army and the demonic army all in one shot, which was what makes the seventh trump war trump so awesome, because God fights for us and we don't have to do the fighting. So that is the 5 months in a nutshell, and how it integrates to the 7 years and how that shortening occurred. The scripture verse that documents this and wraps it all together is Revelation 8:1. There was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. This silence means there was no war in the second half, because all the war was on earth. So this again documents war, fifth trump itself starts the 5 months. That's what the fifth trump does. It blows, it starts the 5 months. And then when you document with Daniel 9:27, in the midst of this 5 months is when that devil and his army is cast out. They can't be cast out until they go to heaven. And so that, I'm just making this video really short, and we'll discuss probably the 1290 days or 42 months in another video. Thank you.